Hi friends, welcome to another weekly reading vlog. This week I will be focusing on a couple of things. So I am currently reading A Court of Wings and Ruin. I am 139 pages in. I am just at the point where Feyre goes back to the Night Court. First time I read this, I gave it 2 stars because... And then I also need to read Transcendent Kingdom this week because it's due back from my library. Heard fantastic things, so I want to read this week. My audiobook is going to be, I'm between 2 things. It's either going to be Black Enough, which is an anthology about what it's like to be Black in America, or a romance. I'm not sure. And then at work, my ebook is Ringmaster by Brianna Hale, which is like a romance between a woman, or I guess a woman, she's like 17 I think, whose father was abusing her, and she ends up running away with the circus when it comes to her town, and the ringmaster of the circus. And nothing has happened so far. I think it's a little under 300 pages, but it's very slow burn as far as like the romance goes. Definitely showing the attraction to each other, but nothing has like actually happened. Those are the things I'm reading. I have to get to work or I'm gonna be late. So we will talk a little bit later on, but these are the priorities. This one first. So we will talk later. Tuesday, I think, and yesterday I finished Ringmaster by Brianna Hale. This is a story of a 17-year-old who is like being abused by her father, so she decides to live with a traveling circus, and she has a romance with the ringmaster, and it's pretty short. It's only like 200 and something pages, but I absolutely loved it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and the slow burn is like everything. Kale, I loved both characters. I will say that the female character definitely felt like she was 17, and that's not the best like thing in the world. I don't love reading age gaps where the person is like 17, 18 and they act that young, because it just keeps reminding me how young they are. I absolutely loved it. I wish it was a full-length book. By the time they actually like kissed for the first time, I was dying inside. I had read Soft Limits by Brianna Hale and DNF'd it, but after this I definitely want to keep going with her, so if you have any recommendations, leave them down in the comments. I am 97 pages into Transcendent Kingdom, and this is like really easy and accessible to read. I'm getting through it pretty quickly. It's basically just following this woman's life, dealing with being like the only Black woman in STEM research at her college, and kind of like just being a woman in research or in science in general, and the hardships of that, dealing with like family issues, a history of like depression in her family, drug addiction, all that kind of stuff. And so you're being told about her life in alternating flashbacks and then present, where she's dealing with her mother who is like dealing with debilitating depression, and so you're getting like her story, and yeah, it's just really good. And the main character is pretty like apathetic. She's very much one of those characters that like is just telling you her past, and then like is leading the interpretations and the opinions to you, like to decide how you feel about them. But yeah, I'm liking it a lot, and I'm going to try to finish it today. So that's the plan. It's very short. It's only like 260 pages. So yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to get eaten up by mosquitoes. So I just finished Transcendent Kingdom, and I don't think I'm gonna rate this. So I haven't read Homegoing, which was the author's debut novel, which a lot of people loved, and which I have heard is very different from this. This follows a woman named Ifty who is in the PhD program at her college, and she is in the science, like STEM program. And she is studying how to essentially change the way the risk-reward system works in rat brains. So she is dealing with her mother currently, who is battling with depression, who she is kind of taking care of. She is dealing with the grief and loss of her brother, who died of a drug overdose when they were younger. Unsureness of religion versus science, and we often see that conversation of the flaws in both. This just feels incredibly personal. I didn't really feel super emotional reading this. This is dealing with a lot of hard topics. It's dealing with like being a black woman in higher education. It's dealing with addiction, loss, grief, like a bunch of stuff, and I just didn't really feel a whole lot of emotional connection to it. A weird experience, because I didn't dislike it, but that didn't have like that emotionally gripping aspect to it, but I still think it's good. I still would recommend reading it. I still think that the various layers of conversation in here are interesting. I think that it could be cathartic for certain specific groups of people, so I would still recommend it. The writing is extremely accessible, almost bare bones writing. You're not really getting a whole lot of emotion, and I think that speaks to Gifty's, like, she seems like very much someone that was raised to believe that emotions don't have their place, and that you're supposed to be calm, composed, and fine all of the time. And so you're reading from her point of view with that mindset in mind, which is fair. I was raised the same way. Like, I understand that mindset, or at least I understand her sitting in that mindset, but because this is flashing to the past and also to her in her college age years, almost as if she's retelling her story, I wish that we had gotten more of an emotional aspect to it, just to see a little bit of growth, I guess. I don't know, this just felt a little disconnected for me, which is fine. Not every story needs to be something that you connect to, but the topics that are discussed in this, I would hope would have an emotional connection with me, because there are several things in here that hit home. So that's kind of where I am with this. I might not even rate it, because it feels personal, like a memoir, but also I just don't know my feelings on it. Because if I give it a 3, that doesn't feel like, this didn't feel average, but if I give it like a 4 or a 5, it also didn't feel on that level. Does that make sense? So I don't know, it just feels too much like a memoir, too personal to the author to qualify it. So I'm probably going to jump back into A Court of Wings and Ruin for the rest of the night, and we will talk tomorrow. Hi friends, it is Wednesday, and I have finished 2 things since we last talked. So the first thing that I finished was Only for You by Naima Simone. This is the last book in her Lick series, and this follows Killian and I don't remember what her name is, but it's like a second chance romance. I didn't like it as much as I like the other 2. This is like following 3 guys, the series is following 3 guys that own an aphrodisiac club. And the first one was probably my favorite. The first one was a 5-star, second one was a 4-star, this one was a 3-star. Because the first one had very strong feminist conversations about women owning their pleasure and all of that kind of stuff. The second one was more about freedom and finding yourself and being who you truly are. And this one was just like a standard erotic romance, like second chance romance. So it wasn't like my absolute favorite, but it was still sexy, and I think it was a good way to end the series. And I also finished All Systems Red, which is the first book in the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. So this follows a murderbot, a bot that is bought to go on like space expeditions and stuff, and they like double as security or whatever the team needs. And this bot has basically turned its governing module off, so it doesn't follow the script of the company that owns it. It just really wants to like watch sitcoms and like watch TV and not really mess with humans. And the company that ends up involved in some disasters, and the murderbot has to like get them out of it. And then they end up like having some like very human-like interactions, and it was fine. It's only like 130 pages, and I just didn't super care about it. I didn't rate it. It was fun, and the murderbot was like funny, but it wasn't like anything serious, you know? I started the audiobook for Someone to Watch Over Me by Lisa Kleypas, and this is the first book in her Bow Street Runner series, and I'm only like maybe an hour or two in, and I'm obsessed with it. Obsessed. So it's an amnesia romance between Vivian and Grant is a Bow Street Runner, and Vivian is a sex worker who has had a previous run-in with Grant, didn't really like leave him the best of impressions, and then she ends up in like the Thames, and he like rescues her, brings her back to his house, and is like nursing her back to health. But she doesn't remember who she is. She doesn't know her name. She doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know like her previous profession or anything like that. And I'm like obsessed with it, and all I want to do is listen to it. It's so good. I've only read one other Lisa Kleypas. I read Again the Magic, which was okay for me. I just think it was a little all over the place, but this I'm loving. So I'm very excited to continue. I wish I had it physically so I could read it physically, but yeah, I'm loving it a whole bunch. Other than that, physically, I'm probably going to get back into A Court of Wings of Ruin. I know that I said that I was going to read it, but I have some library books that I want to pick up as well, so I'm kind of bouncing around on what I'm going to read. And then I'm going to start Aflame by Penelope Douglas, which I'm excited about. It's the fourth book in her Fallen something away series. Fallen Away? Something like that. And I'm hoping that I can read it separately because I haven't read the rest of the books in the series, so hopefully I won't be missing anything. But yeah, I'm excited for that. I'm excited to get back into Penelope Douglas's writing. She has a FF bully romance coming out soon, which I'm stoked for. So yeah, I'm just very happy with my reading right now, and we will check in a little bit later. Bye. Hi friends, it is Thursday, and I have finished one book since the last time we talked. I finished Aflame, which is the fourth book in the Fall Away series, and this follows the first couple in the first book, which I didn't know until about 50% of the way through the book. It's about Tate and Jared, and this is like 4 or 5 years maybe, or a couple years after they break up, which follows the end of the first book. I haven't read any of the books in between, so I didn't know, but this is kind of like a second chance situation, and I ended up giving it 3 stars, which is the exact same rating that I gave Bully, which was the companion novel to this one. And you can definitely tell that like her writing has grown over time, and that she's definitely better at just like everything, but it was still enjoyable, and I really liked the couple. I liked the racing that was included. That was good. So it was just like an average 3. Honestly, I think the fact that I didn't realize it was the same couple speaks to how forgettable the books are, but that's fine. I also ended up DNFing To Catch a Bouquet, which is one of the books that I spun for on my TBR, and it was like a novella. It was only 50 pages, but I DNF'd it at like 25 because it just was not good. It was basically like a quickie story about 2 country people basically on a cruise. It just wasn't written very well, and it just wasn't like my cup of tea, so I DNF'd that. I'm like halfway, a little over halfway through Someone to Watch Over Me by Lisa Kleypas, and I'm still absolutely loving it. We kind of just got like the twist, and I can't say that I didn't see that coming. I'm really liking it, and I'm excited to see where it goes with this twist. And yeah, it's just, I love it a lot. So I'm excited to keep listening to that. And I started the ebook at work for The Mermaid, the Witch, and the Sea, I think is what it's called. And it's like a pirate story. I'm not entirely sure the premise of it, but all I know is it's about one, I think, who's a mermaid, either the mermaid or the witch, who is like a princess who escapes from her mom or something like that when she's in an arranged marriage. And one is like a pirate, and I think that's the mermaid or something. I don't know the entire premise of the story. I just started it. And I started Aru Shah and the End of Time by Roshni Chachki, which is a middle grade story about a girl whose mother is a curator for the Museum of Ancient Indian Art and Culture, and she one day gets dared by some kids that she goes to school with to light this magical lamp that's away, like hidden in glass. There are like Pandava brothers who set to be able to like control the gods or stop the gods, and when she lit this lamp, she frees the sleeper, an ancient demon who is intent on awakening the god of destruction. So she has to find all of the other like Pandava descendants and stop the sleeper from awakening the god of destruction, who will destroy everything. And I am 45 pages in, and I'm really liking this a lot. It's steeped in mythology, obviously, and it's super interesting, very well written. I can't recall what I've read by this author. I know she's not like my favorite. Her middle grade seems to be doing the trick. I'm really liking it, and I cannot wait to continue. But other than that, that is the update. And I think this weekend I'm going to do a 24-hour readathon, which I'm going to do a separate video for, so I will track my reading up until then on this video. But that is the situation, and we will talk in a second for you.